Hey everyone, it's me Noah Meehan of the Arc of Truth, and this is going to be my only video. Currently, I'm making this at 2:49 a.m. on November 5th, 2024, which is Election Day, and polls will be closing later today, and already everyone has basically made up their minds and what their prediction is. So this is basically what my prediction is, and it's based upon a little bit of real clear politics. And, well, let's just get started with the video. So currently, in the state of Nevada, and I'm going to go West Coast down to the south, and then up to the Rust Belt first. So what we have right here is Donald Trump with an RCP average of 0.6. Now, there's been several polls so far that show Donald Trump still being high. Of course, there is this major, at least two outliers, I would say, with New York Times Siena, because honestly, New York Times has such a major issue in terms of trying to poll Trump supporters, and of course, there's Susquehanna. Man, that's hard to pronounce, but anyway, it looks like that Donald Trump will actually carry the state, this at least for election day. Now, I don't know if it's going to be called later tonight, which I'm going to be honest, I really hope so, because a lot of people, including myself, are worried about shenanigans, and it's a pretty rightful thing, especially considering the fact that in Michigan alone, we have been seeing there was actually over 150,000 duplicate ballots that were found, and they're not going to be counted within the Michigan state election. But who knows? Anyway, Arizona. And sorry about my coughing. Sometimes it's a dry weather out here. Currently, we have Donald Trump winning with the RCP average of 2.8 ahead, being the most conservative state, with Georgia falling behind, which I will get into very soon, and Atlas Intel, which has been the most accurate pollster with the 2022 congressional midterms as well as the 2020 presidential election, it has Donald Trump at 5. And if this is the case, if Atlas Intel and its poll manages to hold up to an extremely close degree, this could potentially not only mean that Donald Trump wins this state, but Carrie Lake may actually get up on top. Of course, there's the issue of, again, shenanigans. Maricopa County is not exactly good in terms of trying to count the vote. Supposedly, they're going to need a whole week in order to count the vote. Bullshit. I really hope to God that the other counties will basically play a little bit of a game of chicken, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to put it down here as something that Donald Trump is going to win. And now with Georgia, let's see here. Georgia is currently at 1.3%. He's so far been doing pretty well in the polls, and Atlas Intel, which is the most recent one from November 3rd to the 4th, currently has Donald Trump winning at about 2%. By the way, although for some reason this has actually changed from at least within 2 days, somehow Harris has managed to gain the lead by 0.1%, which if the poll is accurate, which honestly I don't believe it is, I think it actually underestimates Donald Trump's support, then Harris still loses the electoral college. She may win the popular vote, but just barely. Just barely. But as we've seen said again with Atlas Intel, Donald Trump is at about 0.1, and it's from November 3rd to the 4th, and yet in previous polls, he has actually done well with Atlas Intel at around 2-3. I don't know why it's got down to 1. Maybe it's just because of the small amount of time frame. I don't know, but I would say that but still, in spite of that, I'm going to rely on Atlas Intel, at least in this case. Again, this is just my actual prediction. I think that Donald Trump may actually get the popular vote, but I'm not focusing right now on the popular vote. And besides, the popular vote is not necessarily important within the general election. Although I would say winning the popular vote does give you a popular mandate, if that makes sense, because you may have won the electoral college, but if the amount of voters did not exactly vote for you in the end, that kind of would spell a problem, and that would actually give some legitimate strength to the political opposition, in this case, the establishment. But anyway, I'm going to be switching this over to lean Republican, and I'm just only putting them as lean Republicans just for the sake of clarification. I'm not going to do measurements of different sizes of leads for either state. Anyway, North Carolina. Let's see. Okay, here we go. North Carolina. North Carolina is slightly behind in the RCP average compared to that of Georgia, which, as I said before, just to make sure, by 0.1%. North Carolina it shows Donald Trump ahead with 1.2, and the analyst intel shows Donald Trump at 2. And so there's not really too much change, except again with the New York Times CNN poll, which for some reason has Harris leading by 2. I'm pretty certain if that poll wasn't introduced, Trump's lead would be a little bit bigger, not by much, maybe like by 1.5, but nonetheless, it's still a substantial lead. So I would say that North Carolina would still go to Donald Trump. In each case with Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia, I predict that those states will go to Donald Trump, which means, and based upon the actions of Kamala Harris as well as Donald Trump to a certain extent, that the Rust Belt states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania will be the ones who will be deciding the election. Now, I know that there have been talks about potential flips like, say, Virginia, New Mexico, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Donald Trump even mentioned the fact that apparently the Republicans were leaning in a state such as New Jersey, which has 14 electoral college votes. Now, could there be a flip? Possibly, but do not expect much. I know that Virginia is becoming pretty competitive, and even if Donald Trump does not manage to flip any of those states, it's nonetheless, I would say, it's important to look at how much Kamala Harris wins in those states, because if she only wins those states by a small margin, imagine the impact that would have on other states, especially battleground states such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, because that could trickle down. Now, so far, most of our bets hinge on Pennsylvania, the most important state, the key state in this election. No, pun intended, yes, because that's the nickname of the state of Pennsylvania, or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Anyway, I expect this to be very competitive, but I will say that Donald Trump, especially thanks to the fact that the early vote has come in with Republicans managing to chip away a lot of the blue wall, that Donald Trump is in a good position. Of course, Atlas Intel here has +1, and the RCP average has Trump 0.4, which is about a half a point. And so far, it seems pretty good. And although there's this weird echelon insights with Trump +6, admittedly, that is a major outlier, especially considering the fact that most of these polls either show Trump being ahead or there being a tie. And that also, I would say I would give even a little bit of wiggle room for these Harris +1, +2 polls, but again, there's still major outliers, and it has since gone towards Donald Trump in recent days. Anyway, this, I believe, will still give Donald Trump the state of Pennsylvania, but nonetheless, it's something to look into because, well, again, it's the most important state. It said that whoever wins Pennsylvania potentially wins the presidency. Now, here's the situation currently on the ground with both Wisconsin and Michigan. And I know that there are a lot of people online who have actually put it down as just the way that it is currently as they're looking on the screen. Michigan and Wisconsin are just toss up because, well, it's a 50-50 some game. Now, I kind of have a different view on this, uh, although there are other people who have a different view as well. Not just in the terms of like a toss up, but for some reason, just based upon the RCP average, because in the state of Wisconsin, let's try that first. Harris is up by 0.4%, while Alice Intel has Trump at 1, and another group, Trafalgar, is Harris plus 1. So it's kind of, but the problem with this is that Wisconsin is very hard to poll. It's been like that for many years, and it tends to underestimate Donald Trump's support. Hell, even if you forget about that for a second, there's the issue of the fact that turnout, especially in urban cities and with female voters, have actually decreased in comparison to that of the 2020 election. Now, I know that has been a major issue with women voting, but to be fair, they have been known to vote through mail-in ballots through earlier than election day, while men tend to try to make that up while casting their ballots on election day. Now, I've actually managed to mail my ballot on election day in the state of Washington, but of course I don't expect Washington to actually flip, unfortunately. But yeah, a man can dream, I guess. But nonetheless, with that being said, I also want to mention something as well with the significant impact that the enthusiasm back with the state of Pennsylvania. Back in 2020, the Democrats had such a major lead of 1.1 million ballots already casted in, just based upon registration alone. Here, they still have a lead, but by barely 400,000. This is not a good place that Kamala Harris wants to be in, because that is basically dangerous territory that she's in. If what the Democrats were hoping for would be at least 5, maybe 600,000 ballots in favor of the Democrats. If that's the case, then there's a possibility you can argue that Kamala Harris would be the favorite there. But nonetheless, she is seeing a drop with the urban vote. She's seeing the drop with the female vote, minorities, and of course, as I said before, with the chipping of the blue wall in Pennsylvania. And as we all know, the Rust Belt tends to vote together in mass. Although there would be a slight difference between these two in this bet. And back to Wisconsin. As I said before, Wisconsin's very hard to pull, and there have been cases where it tends to underestimate Trump. In fact, in the previous elections, in Wisconsin, at this point in time, Clinton was at 6.5, and yet, as we all know, Donald Trump managed to win the state, but only barely, less than half a point. Same thing with Biden. He was at 6.7%, but then he managed to win the state, supposedly, but just barely. It was by 7 points in both cases. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be a blowout in Wisconsin or anything, but I will argue that there is a strong possibility that these polls are not estimating the amount of support correctly that Donald Trump has within the state of Wisconsin. I would say maybe it could be off, I would say maybe 2%. And I, based upon the RCP average, admittedly that could be a little wrong. But who knows? I I honestly believe that if Donald Trump manages to win the state of Pennsylvania tonight, or even if he maintains his lead in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin will follow. Now with Michigan, I would say that's a different story because Michigan, in comparison, is actually more liberal compared to that of the other states in the Rust Belt. In fact, Wisconsin is actually much more conservative than the other states. But right now, Harris has a half of a point of a lead, and Atlas Intel and Trafalgar Group, who are known to be more accurate pollsters, have Donald Trump winning the state for Atlas Intel 2%, while Trafalgar Group has it at 1%. I don't know for sure. This state is the exact case of a toss-up state. You can easily see it go either way. You can, considering the fact that it is such a liberal state, and it tends to swing that way, and tends to be directly to the left. You can make the argument that it could go for Kamala Harris, but just barely. However, you can still say the same thing with Donald Trump, considering the fact that, again, the urban and female vote is going downwards, and the Democrats are not doing very good in terms of ballot harvesting. They're in the lead in both the states of Wisconsin and Michigan, but not by that much. By maybe 10, 20,000, and that difference can easily be made up. And let's just be honest, Kamala Harris is not exactly doing well with the Muslim Arab American vote, and for pretty well known reasons, with the Palestinian conflict and all that, and that could and with even endorsements not just of Muslim leaders in Michigan, but also Somalis within Minnesota. Although I will say that I don't believe Minnesota is going to flip, it will nonetheless cause a shift to potentially put this to lean Republican. Now, again, it's a 50-50 chance, but nonetheless, it is still possible. And plus, Jill Stein has been polling much better among Arab Americans and Muslims in the state of Michigan than both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And they tend to vote towards the left. So who knows? Now, in this case, I'm going to be a little bit safe and say lean Democrat. Either way, Donald Trump wins the election with 297 votes, while Harris and Walz get 241 at minimum, at least based upon my prediction. Now, if he actually wins the state of Michigan, maybe even he could still win with 312 electoral votes, still winning the election, but being much bigger by 6 electoral votes than his win in 2016. Now, I don't know who's going to win the national vote. From my personal opinion, with Donald Trump having a massive surge lately from late September to early November, I would argue that Donald Trump is in a much bigger spot to win the popular vote this time around. Harris, not so much. She's doing worse in comparison to Hillary Clinton in 2016 and Biden in 2020. Clinton, at this point in time, was at 3.2%, while Biden got 7.2%. Either way, the results of the popular vote for both Clinton and Biden, who, funny enough, both supposedly got the unpopular vote, but it wasn't by that much. If I recall correctly, Biden managed to get the popular vote by about maybe 4 points, if I'm correct. Just want to be clear. 2020 presidential election. Okay, take that back. Maybe it's Yeah, take it back. It was about 4, give or take. And in the case of Hillary Clinton, that was by a much smaller margin. From what I've heard, yep, it's a smaller margin by about 2%. So who knows what's going to happen with this upcoming election day? Possibly, and I'm willing to say this, I think Donald Trump will win the popular vote, and I think he will win the electoral college. I don't believe this crap about supposedly Kamala Harris can still lose the popular vote but win the electoral college, because that's not exactly how the electoral college is currently set up, because based upon populations, the electoral college numbers can change. And it's not in the favor at this time around towards the Democrats. It's actually towards the Republicans. Plus, it's kind of ironic with that argument, considering the fact that they're not exactly in support of the electoral college a lot of the time, especially considering that they've been saying that since George W. Bush, as well as Donald Trump in 2000 and 2016, respectively, when they did not win the popular vote. So who knows? All I'm just saying is that, as always, from ever since 2016, the Democrats are changing their tune from time to time, just issuing double standards. But then, as the saying goes, if Democrats didn't have double standards, they would have no standards at all. But anyways, guys, this is my overall prediction of the 2020 election, and this is what currently Real Clear Politics has it as. But either way, this may lead to a possible Trump victory. I am cautiously optimistic. All I know is the only way in order to make sure that this actually happens, that Donald Trump wins the popular vote as well as the electoral college, is to go out there and vote. Bring your friends, bring your family, abduct them if you have to. No, don't do that. But it's definitely important to get them to vote in the polls, because that is what's going to determine the future of this country. My name is Noah Meehan on The Arc Truth. Please post your comments down below, like this video, subscribe, and share with friends. And I really hope to God that my prediction is correct. Thank you.